Look, I am going to tell you one thing, and listen to me well. People usually say that poverty is like a cough, that it cannot be hidden. But at my 70 years, I have proven that the vileness and rot of the human heart are 100 times harder to hide, no matter how much expensive cologne you throw on yourself. That night, my son-in-law's mansion in the exclusive hills of the suburbs shone with an obscene intensity, like a Christmas tree lit up in the middle of July. The crystal chandeliers threw sparkles that hurt the eyes. The clinking of cut crystal glasses crashing sounded everywhere, and that jazz music, a saxophone that cried like a cat in heat, filled the air. The rich call, that class. I, Michael, was sitting shrunk in the darkest and furthest corner of the dining room, almost stuck to the service door, on a hard stool that surely Daniel, my appreciated son-in-law, had taken out of the junk room so I would not dirty his velvet chairs. I was wearing my gray sweater, the wool one that my wife Emily knitted for me 2 years before she died, when her hands were already trembling from the disease. It was a little frayed at the elbows, and smelled of mothballs and storage, but it was clean, however. In that party hall that stank of designer perfume and the arrogance of new money, I knew perfectly well that I looked like a grease stain on an immaculate white tablecloth. I felt small, like a spare part in a Swiss watch. Daniel was standing in the middle of the room, the center of attention, with a glass of red wine in his hand. He rocked that blood-colored liquid with an arrogance that turned my stomach. Feeling like the king of the city, he wore an Armani suit that cost more than my pension of 3 years. His hair slicked back with so much gel it looked like a helmet, and that handsome but greasy face of so much satisfaction and excess. By his side were his guests of honor, 2 Chinese men, Mr. Li and his assistant. They were the golden opportunity, the white sharks, bombastic words that Daniel had been repeating like a parrot all week. And Sarah, my daughter, my poor girl. She was running from one side to another like a headless chicken, with her makeup running from the heat of the kitchen. She carried the tray of canapes, served wine, and smiled with that industrial smile, tense and tired, every time Daniel snapped his fingers to give her orders, as if she were a pet. Seeing her like that, I felt as if someone was squeezing my heart with rusty pliers. I raised her with these hands full of grease and scars from fixing watches, dreaming that she would be a queen, so that now she would end up as an unpaid servant in her own house. "Cheers!" Daniel shouted, with his face red from alcohol. He turned to Mr. Li, smiling with that fake grimace that made me want to erase it with a punch, and then he started to speak. To everyone's surprise, he did not speak in English, nor in that broken and pretentious Spanish he always shows off with his golf club friends. He spoke in Chinese, fluent Mandarin. He was convinced that, in that room, apart from the 3 of them, nobody understood the language of the dragon. He thought that for us that was just noise. He leaned into Mr. Li's ear, lowering his voice, a conspiratorial whisper that, however, rumbled like thunder in my head. "Mr. Li, take a look at that dark corner. That wrinkled old man is my father-in-law. He looks like old furniture, right? Those inherited junk pieces that get in the way in the minimalist living room, but that you are still ashamed to throw in the trash out of sentimentalism." Mr. Li threw me a sideways glance, over his glass. His eyes were cold, calculating, without a shred of humanity. Then he made a mocking grimace, like someone looking at a mangy dog, and nodded slightly. Daniel, emboldened by the complicity, let out a laugh and kept spitting poison in surprisingly articulate Chinese. "My wife is the same, stupid, clingy and boring like a plate of cold oatmeal that nobody wants anymore. You sign the contract calmly. Man, as soon as the money falls into the account in the Cayman Islands. I grab the cash and disappear with Jessica. I'm fed up, disgusted with acting the comedy of the happy family. I will leave all the bank debts and mortgages to that stupid woman so she can carry them alone. Let her rot and starve along with her useless father. I had my cup of tea in my hand, which was already ice cold. My fingers tensed around the porcelain. I did not let it drop. I did not scream. I did not get up to strangle him. My God, how I wished to do it. I felt the bile rising in my throat, but 70 years of hard life have taught me that when the beast shows its fangs, if you move before time, it rips out your jugular. I stayed still like a stone statue, but inside my chest my old heart beat with the frantic rhythm of hate, an accelerated and dangerous tick-tock. Damn! This wretch did not know one fundamental thing. The last 2 years, in the endless nights of insomnia, to combat the crushing loneliness and the fear of the disease that took my wife's memory, I began to learn Chinese in secret. I lowered my head towards my cold soup, swallowing every word of that insult as if they were broken glass. Very well. Son-in-law, do you think I'm old and moth-eaten furniture? You're about to know what it feels like when a solid oak wardrobe falls on top of you. Before continuing, subscribe to the Williams Revenge Stories channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments below. Oh boy, what a weird sensation it is to know that you have been sold like cattle. It does not burn like fire. It is a cold sensation, metallic, a cold that runs from the base of your back to the back of your neck, making your hair stand on end. I looked sideways at Mr. Li, looking for some trace of decency. For an instant, I had a naive hope that he, a businessman from the land of Confucius, a culture that values filial piety and respect for ancestors so much, would frown at such a lack of respect. I expected that, at least for masculine honor, he would show disgust upon hearing a man insult his wife's family at his own table. But no, my hope went out as fast as a cheap candle in a hurricane. Mr. Li not only did not get upset, but he patted Daniel on the back, laughing with a guttural sound, as if they were sharing the best joke in the world. He answered him in Chinese, with a voice raspy and deep from years of smoking strong tobacco. You are cruel, Daniel. Very cruel, but I like it. You have guts. He who does big business cannot let women's skirts and soft feelings get in the way. Listen well. As long as you give me my 10% commission under the table. As you promised, I sign whatever. This money comes from the venture capital fund of the corporate in Shanghai. If something is lost, we report it as emerging market risk, and that is it. Who is going to find out thousands of miles away? Happy cooperation, toasted Daniel, raising his glass victorious. Happy cooperation. Clinked his glass, Mr. Li. The sound of fine crystal clashing seemed to me as strident as a knife sharpening against a grinding stone. So it was clear. There were no doubts. This was not a strategic investment or a business expansion. It was a robbery, an organized looting between a greedy and hungry wolf and an old cunning fox, and the victims sacrificed on the altar of their greed. My daughter, Sarah. Dad. Daniel's scream in English made me jump, taking me out of my trance and bringing me back to the miserable reality. Yes, yes, son. I stuttered on purpose, hunching my back more and trying to make my voice sound as trembling, old and harmless as possible. The ice ran out. Go to the kitchen for more. And hurry up. Drag your feet faster. Do not make the important guests wait, he ordered with disdain, without even deigning to look at me while cutting the tip of an expensive cigar. Yes, yes, I am going. I am going right now, I muttered, getting up with difficulty, pretending to lean painfully on my arthritic knees. I walked towards the kitchen and passed by Sarah. The poor thing was standing in the doorway, with drops of sweat beading her forehead and a kitchen rag squeezed in her hands. She looked at me with infinite pity in her eyes. Dad, please let me do it, she whispered, trying to take the silver ice bucket from me. You do not have to serve them. No. I pushed her hand away gently but firmly, and I looked straight into those big brown eyes, as innocent as those of her mother Emily, eyes that had never seen the true evil of the world. Until now. Let me go. You rest a little. My girl, I entered the kitchen, which was a mess, and took the ice out of the freezer. The cold of the cubes chilled the bones of my hands, but it did not compare with the polar cold I felt in my soul. I looked towards the living room through the crack of the swinging door. Daniel whispered something to Mr. Lee, pointing at the paintings on the wall, those landscapes that Sarah bought with her savings as a teacher. Surely he was already putting a price on them to sell them cheap in a pawn shop. I, Michael, an old retiree with a pension that barely covers medicines, a watchmaker who spent his life hunched over tiny gears, repairing the time of others. What could I do now against these giants? I have no gun, I have no money, I have no influence, but I have ears, and I have a head that, although old, has never stopped working with the precision of a stopwatch. Shameless. Do you think I'm invisible? Do you think I'm part of the scenery? It is okay. I am going to be the ghost that torments you in your worst nightmares. That night, back in my solitude, I could not sleep a wink. I returned to my little house in the old neighborhood, where the walls are stained by humidity and time, and the noise of sirens and horns gets into the bed like an intruder. I sat at my old wooden desk, full of cigarette burns from my youth, where I had my watchmaker tools scattered, precision screwdrivers, tweezers, oilers, all already a little rusty, but in a corner of the table, hidden under a pile of old sports newspapers, was my true treasure. 3 grid school notebooks and a second-hand smartphone with a cracked screen. 2 years ago, when Emily, my wife, passed away after a long and painful battle against dementia, panic seized me, a visceral fear that one day I too would wake up and have forgotten my name, forgotten her face, forgotten who I am. The doctor told me I had to exercise my brain, learn something new. Michael, something difficult, he told me, while prescribing vitamins. So I chose Chinese. Why? Not for any high or intellectual reason. One day, changing channels, I stumbled upon a period Chinese movie. I was mesmerized watching the characters. It seemed to me that their writing was curious, logical and complicated, like the gears of a repeater watch, and I started studying. I had no money for private classes or institutes. I downloaded that Green Owl app that is free. Although it filled me with ads, I watched tutorials on YouTube until my eyes burned. I joined forums of students, using the nickname The Old Cat to practice reading news, using the translator to understand what I did not know. Every night, while the neighborhood slept, I stayed studying under the yellow light of my lamp. 1, 2, 3, Yi, San. I practiced writing every stroke of the Chinese characters on the back of old calendars, repeating the tones in a low voice so as not to wake up the neighbors. Sarah and Daniel knew nothing. They thought I was senile, that I talked alone with the ghosts in my room. Once Sarah asked me, worried, "Who do you talk to so much? Dad?" And I just laughed to myself, "I am just praying." Daughter, pray on, pray on. Blessed be God. It turns out that without knowing it, I was sharpening my weapon, my invisible sword, for this war for 2 years. I opened the notebook that night. The blank page quickly filled with the words I had just heard in the mansion. I wrote them with a trembling hand, but with fury. Pianzi, scammer, Huilu, bribe, Li Hun, divorce, Pochun, bankruptcy. I stared at those black letters. This was no longer a hobby to avoid Alzheimer's. This was a judicial sentence. I opened the old laptop that Sarah had given me when she bought a new one, the one that takes 10 minutes to turn on. I typed in the search engine with one finger, Shanghai Ocean Group. It was the name of the company that was on the golden business card that Mr. Lee negligently forgot on the table, and that I quickly kept in my pants pocket when picking up the dishes. The official website appeared, all in simplified Chinese. Daniel surely thought that for his father-in-law that was like seeing an unintelligible brick wall. But no, I could read it, with difficulty. But I could. I read about the organizational structure, the values of the company. I found the board of directors section, and I saw a name and a photo. Jiang Wei, president of the group, a man with a military face. Next to it there were some small letters at the bottom of the page. In the compliance and corporate ethics section, a crazy idea. Almost suicidal. Crossed my mind. If Mr. Li is the worm eating the apple, surely there must be a gardener in charge of the orchard. And if I cannot kill the worm with my own strength because it is too big, I'm going to call the owner of the orchard to burn the whole infected tree. But first, I needed evidence. The word of a poor old man against a successful businessman weighs nothing. I needed something sharper, something irrefutable. The next day, I arrived at my daughter's house very early. The sun had barely risen. I knew Daniel would have already gone to work, or wherever he went with that Jessica. I did not care. Sarah was in the kitchen, with swollen and red eyes. Surely she cried all night. The coffee maker was on, but she just stared into the void. "Dad, what are you doing here so early?" she asked, trying to force a smile that came out like a grimace of pain. "I came to fix the garden faucet, the one that leaks. Yesterday I saw it was wasting water, and I do not want you to get a high bill." I lied with a naturalness that surprised me. I went out to the garden, pretending to check the pipe, but my old eagle eyes fixed on Daniel's office, an annex construction to the house. The glass door was locked, but I knew his tricks. I knew he hid the spare key under the pot of the big cactus. That careless and stupid habit of the arrogant who believe that no one dares to touch their sacred things. I waited for Sarah to go up to the bathroom. I got into the office. The room stank of a rancid mixture of cigars, alcohol, and a cheap and sweet woman's perfume that was not my daughter's. Wretch, he dared to bring his mistress here, to my daughter's house. I am not James Bond. I am just Michael, the watchmaker. I do not know how to hack computers or fight kung fu, but I know my trade. Observe the details. Find the piece that does not fit and file it away. I checked the trash can. Empty. He had already taken it out. Very smart to erase tracks. But I looked at the mahogany desk. There, next to the turned-off computer, was a very expensive Italian leather notebook. I opened it carefully. The first pages were just agenda notes in Spanish. Golf meetings. Dinners. Nothing suspicious. Wait a moment. My finger noticed something. I turned to the last pages. There were marks on the blank paper. The invisible groove left by the pressure of the pen from the page they tore off on top. I took out of my pocket a soft graphite pencil 2B, an indispensable tool of a watchmaker to mark pieces. I shaded gently, very gently, over the paper. Like magic, the white letters began to appear on the gray background of the graphite. They were numbers and codes. $50,000. Cayman Bank. Jessica Ack, and next to it, a phrase written by hand, in pinyin, the phonetics of Chinese, that he was practicing like a kindergarten child. Wo ai ni Jessica. Wo men ku Shanghai. I love you. Jessica, we are going to Shanghai. My hands froze and I felt a hole in my stomach. Not only was he stealing from her, not only was he cheating on her, he was practicing the language of the future country, where he planned to run away with his mistress. Using my daughter's money. I took out my cracked screen cell phone and took a picture of the page, taking care that the shading was clearly visible. Proof 1. Suddenly, I heard the engine of a sports car braking in the driveway. Daniel had returned. He must have forgotten something. My heart started beating wildly. Boom, 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 as if it were going to burst out of my chest. I put the notebook exactly where it was, taking care of the alignment with the edge of the table. I shot out the back door, grabbed my wrench, and threw myself on the ground next to the water faucet, pretending to tighten a nut. "What the hell are you doing here?" Daniel's voice sounded behind my back, loaded with suspicion. I turned around. He was there, looking at me with distrust, with his briefcase in his hand. The faucet was leaking a lot, son. I looked up. wiping the real sweat from my forehead with my sleeve and smiling like the old fool he thought I was. I did not want you to waste money on water, that is all. I am a useful old man, you see? He swept me with his gaze. From my old shoes full of mud to my trembling hands, the suspicion in his eyes disappeared, replaced by the usual contempt. Next time, do not enter this private area without explicit permission, and wash your hands before entering the house. You are going to stain my imported marble floor. He turned around and entered the house, slamming the door. I released the air I had held until my lungs hurt. Mother of God, that was close. But I already had what I needed. Now came the hardest part. Harder than facing Daniel. I had to talk to Sarah. I had to break my girl's heart into 1,000 pieces to save her life. I waited for night to fall. Daniel went out again, perfumed and singing, to see a partner. I knew perfectly well what kind of partner he was going to see. I called Sarah on the landline. Dad, is it late? Did something bad happen? I need to see you. Right now. Not at the house. In the little park near your subdivision. The one with the stone benches. Do not ask anything. Come out now. My tone was so serious and gloomy that Sarah did not dare to question me. 15 minutes later, she appeared in the night mist. She wore a light coat over her pajamas, shrunk by the cold wind. Dad, what is happening? Are you sick? Does your heart hurt? She grabbed my hand with anguish, checking my face. I withdrew my hand gently. I could not afford to soften now. If I hugged her, I could not tell her the truth. Sit down, Sarah, and get ready. I took out the phone, opened the gallery, and put the photo of the notebook with the pencil marks. And, most importantly, I played the audio recording I made secretly at the party last night. The part where Daniel spoke with Mr. Lee in Chinese. The audio played, with a little background noise, but the voices were clear. Dad, is this Chinese? I do not understand anything. Why are you playing this for me? Sarah looked at me confused, with fear in her eyes. I do understand, I said, with a hard voice, staring at her. I am going to translate every word for you, Sarah. And you have to listen well. You have to endure. Because your life, your mother's house that you mortgaged, and your future depend on what is in this disgusting recording. I started translating, pausing the audio phrase by phrase. My wife is a stupid and boring cow. I'm going to throw her into the street without a penny. The 10% bribe for you. Mr. Lee. Sarah's face changed color. She turned pale as paper. At first it was disbelief, pure denial. No. Dad, you are wrong. Surely you're translating wrong. Daniel loves me. He is stressed about work. He would never say that. Listen, stop lying to yourself, I shouted at her. It was the first time in years that I raised my voice to my daughter. I shook her by the shoulders. I pointed to the photo on the cell phone. Look at this. $50,000 transferred to an account in Cayman in the name of Jessica. Who is Jessica? It is the secretary, he says, is his distant cousin. Wo ai ni? I love you. Do you understand, Sarah? He is loving another woman with your money. He is building his love nest with the bricks of your house. Sarah snatched the phone from me. She stared at the blurry numbers from the graphite. Her hands started trembling violently. Tears welled up, not like a soft soap opera cry, but with choked sobs, ugly and painful, from someone who is drowning inside. She grabbed her chest, as if she had been shot, and doubled over on the cold stone bench. Why? I did everything for him. She sobbed between spasms. I left my career. I sold even Grandma's and Mom's jewelry so he could start his business. I forgave him everything. Seeing her suffer like that, destroyed, broke my soul into 1,000 pieces. I wanted to hug her, tell her, leave it. Daughter, let's go. But I couldn't. I had to be made of stone in that moment, so she could be made of steel. Later. Cry, I told her coldly, looking towards the dark trees. Cry all you want tonight. Empty the pain. But tomorrow you dry your tears. I do not have money to hire thugs or expensive lawyers. I am old. I cannot fight him with blows because he kills me. But you and I have brains. We have dignity. I put my hand on her shoulder and squeezed it hard, transmitting my rage to her. He despises me for being a poor and senile watchmaker. He despises you for being a submissive and dumb wife. He thinks we are trash, and that, my daughter, is our greatest advantage. No one watches their back from trash. Do you want to recover what is yours, or do you want to end up in the street watching him laugh in Shanghai? Sarah raised her face slowly. She had mascara running all over her face. She looked like a sad raccoon, but in those swollen eyes I saw a spark born, a red ember, the spark of hate, the spark of the blood that runs through her veins, the blood of those women who endure everything, but when cornered are more fearsome than the devil himself. Teach me, Dad, she said with a hoarse voice, broken, but determined. What do we have to do to destroy him? I smiled, a sad smile but sharp as a scalpel. First, we have to write a letter that travels thousands of miles to Shanghai. The next morning, Sarah came to my house, not to the marble and glass mansion in the hills, but to my old apartment in the old neighborhood, here, where the paint falls off in pieces and the neighbors shout, "Good morning," from early on. But at least here the air is clean of lies and pretensions. The girl did not wear a drop of makeup. She still had deep circles under her eyes, purple. But that look of panic and vulnerability from last night had disappeared. Now she had a terrifying calm, icy, like the surface of a lake right before the storm breaks. Dad, she left her designer bag, which now seemed out of place, on my wobbly wooden table. I did not sleep. I investigated everything I could about the Ocean Group on the internet. I served her a cup of black coffee. Steaming! The cheap kind from the pot, with cinnamon that I have been drinking for decades, and that she loved as a child. Drink it. Honey. So the soul returns to the body. What did you find? Sarah took out a stack of printed sheets from a 24-hour cyber cafe. This group is not just any company. They have a reputation for having steel military discipline. The president, Zhang Wei, the founder, comes from the army. He is a man of rigid principles. He hates internal corruption more than anything in the world. Last year, he put his own brother-in-law in jail, who was vice president, for accepting bribes on a railway project. He had no mercy. I nodded, taking a noisy sip of the bitter coffee. Good. Very good. Then we found the pressure point, the Achilles heel. The snake Daniels align with the rat, Mr. Lee, to gnaw at the dragon Zhang Wei's barn. If we go to the police here, Daniel can use the money he already stole to bribe judges, cover their mouths, or drag out the trial for years, until we run out of a penny. But if we warn the dragon will spit fire and burn both of them to ashes, Sarah completed, with a sharp look, visualizing the scene. I looked at my daughter, feeling a strange mixture of immense pride and deep pain. 2 days ago, she was a sweet housewife who only worried about what her husband was going to have for dinner or what dress to wear. Now she was sitting in my old kitchen, coldly planning how to destroy her husband. Damn, life teaches you to mature based on slaps and betrayals. But we need irrefutable evidence. Sarah. Steal evidence, I said, pointing to the papers with my oil-stained index finger. My recording is good, but it is not enough. A good lawyer can say it was edited, or that he was drunk and talking nonsense. We need to see the money, the physical trail of dirty money, where it comes from and where it goes. Paper speaks. Sarah bit her lip. Thoughtful. He uses a special bank app for his black transactions, an offshore bank. I've seen him enter the password secretly, covering the screen, but he changes it all the time. He is paranoid, and he always carries the physical security tokens stuck to him, on his keychain or in his pocket. No one carries something attached 24 hours a day, not even if it were their skin. I laughed quietly, the dry laugh of a watchmaker who knows that every machine, however perfect, stops or fails at some point. He has to shower, he has to sleep, or he has to get careless when he feels safest and most arrogant. You mean that? Sarah understood where I was going. You have to act, Sarah. You have to go back to that house you now hate. You have to be the most docile, dumbest, most submissive wife in the world. Make him believe he already won, that he has you eating from his hand, that you suspect nothing. When an arrogant man believes himself absolute king, he lowers his guard and takes off his armor. Sarah clenched her fists on the table, digging her nails into her flesh until her knuckles turned white. Do I have to smile at the man who called me a cow? Do I have to let him touch me? I grabbed her hand, my calloused and old hand covering her trembling and soft one. Yes, that is the hardest role of your life, harder than any job. But remember one thing. When you smile at him, you are not smiling at your husband. You are laughing at the grave he himself is digging with every lie. Sarah returned to the mansion in the hills. I did not go with her. I stayed in my apartment praying a rosary, but I imagined the scene as clearly as if I had put a hidden camera in her eyes. That afternoon, Daniel arrived home early. He came from seeing the partner, which I knew perfectly well meant rolling around with that Jessica in some luxury motel. The smell of another woman's perfume, a cheap floral scent, was still impregnated on his shirt collar, mixed with the smell of cold smoke and his own vanity. Where are you? Did you iron my blue shirt? The silk one? He shouted from the entrance as soon as he crossed the door, throwing the keys on the table. Normally, Sarah would have run out of the kitchen, drying her hands, apologizing 1,000 times for not waiting for him at the door. But today, she stopped for a second. She breathed deep, filling her lungs with courage. She came out of the kitchen, walking slowly, with a glass of freshly squeezed orange juice in her hand. I already ironed it. My life, it is hanging in the closet, ready as you like it, Sarah said, with a voice so sweet, so cloying, like honey poisoned with arsenic. You work so hard for us. Drink a little juice to refresh yourself. Daniel stopped dead, surprised. He looked at his wife with suspicion, scanning her. Maybe he expected to see a face swollen from crying or hear a complaint about arriving late and smelling like another woman. But no. In front of him was Sarah, impeccable, smiling with that meek smile, almost stupid, that he despised and underestimated so much. Uh-huh, he snorted with disdain. He grabbed the glass without saying thank you and drank it in one gulp. The suspicion left him as quickly as it arrived. He was too vain and narcissistic to think his cow had brains or malice. Tomorrow I have the important signing with the Chinese. You better fix yourself up nicely. Do not make me look bad with your old rags. Yes, I know. Love, I will be your best support. Your trophy, Sarah replied, approaching to smooth the lapel of his jacket, holding her breath so as not to smell the other woman's perfume, an affectionate gesture that gave me goosebumps when she told me. But it was necessary to put the beast to sleep. That night came the golden opportunity. Daniel went to shower. He had the irritating habit of singing loud, badly tuned opera while showering. The noise of the water and his screams covered everything outside. He left the cell phone and leather wallet on the dresser. Sticking out of the wallet was the small device of the bank token. Sarah tiptoed into the bedroom, barefoot. Her heart beat against her ribs like a war drum. Boom, 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 boom. She grabbed Daniel's cell phone. The screen lit up, locked with code. Damn it! But Sarah closed her eyes and thought, he is the being who loves himself most in the universe. The password could not be his wife's birthday, nor the wedding anniversary. That is for sentimental people. She tried his birth date. Incorrect. She tried the license plate of the Porsche Carrera he had just bought and could not stop talking about. Click. Unlocked. What a basic and predictable guy. She went into the text messages. Her fingers flew over the screen. She searched for transfer or bank. A bunch of balance and movement notifications appeared. Quickly, with trembling hands. She took out her own cell phone and took photos of the screen. Transfer of $50,000 to account Jessica Gomez. Cayman Islands. Transfer of $20,000 to account Wang Li, wife of Mr. Li. Concept. Consulting fees. There was the silver bullet. Consulting fees. The elegant and corporate name for the shameless bribe. Mr. Li's wife received the money, meaning Mr. Li was diverting money from the group to his pocket through his woman. Suddenly, the singing in the shower stopped. The water turned off. A terrifying silence filled the room. Sarah got scared. She felt panic rising up her throat. She exited the app in a hurry, wiped her fingerprints from the screen with her blouse sleeve, put the cell phone exactly where it was, moved barely a millimeter. The bathroom door burst open. Daniel came out wrapped in a towel, amid a cloud of steam, with wet hair dripping. "What are you doing here?" he asked abruptly, squinting his eyes upon seeing her standing there. Sarah was by the bed, smoothing the quilt obsessively. She turned slowly, forcing a calm smile, although inside she was about to faint. "I was just preparing the bed so you sleep comfortably." "My heaven? What temperature do you want the air conditioning?" Daniel looked at her for a second, analyzing her face, and then shrugged, losing interest. "At 72 degrees. And get out of here. I need my space to concentrate." Sarah left the room and closed the door softly. As soon as the latch clicked, her legs buckled and she fell sitting in the hallway. She leaned against the wall, panting as if she had run a marathon, with the cell phone pressed against her chest. She already had the proof, but most importantly, she hadn't killed him right there with the bedside lamp. Having the proof of the transfer in a blurry photo was one thing, but to truly sink them we needed something more lethal, something technical, something that directly connected Mr. Li and Daniel to the fraud against the mother corporation, and that left no room for doubt. The next day, I returned to my daughter's house disguised in my old overalls and my plumber's toolbox, in case some nosy neighbor saw. Daniel had already left. Sarah and I locked ourselves in the study and leaned over her laptop. "Look at this." "Dad." Sarah zoomed in on the photo of the messages from last night. "He sent money to Lee's wife. But we need to prove that Lee knows about this, that it is not a legitimate payment, and that this is the condition to sign the $1 million contract." "WeChat," I said, adjusting my glasses. "They use WeChat to communicate. The Chinese do everything there. Business, payments, gossip. It is their WhatsApp, but on steroids. But Daniel's computer has a password, and that one is difficult. Use his fingerprint." Sarah sighed, frustrated. I smiled with malice and took out of the inner pocket of my overalls a tiny black USB device. "Yesterday, while you played the perfect wife and suffered. I went to the downtown electronics market. I asked an old friend from my times, a boy whose watches I fixed, and who is now called the Hacker, to prepare this little gift for me. He told me it is a keylogger or something like that. Just plug it in. It copies the chat history and passwords if the computer is in sleep mode and not fully turned off. It cost me my last savings, but it is worth it." "Dad?" Sarah looked at me with eyes like plates, impressed. "Since when do you know those spy things? When one gets old and nobody pays attention to him? He has plenty of time to observe and learn." "Daughter." And I did not want to waste it watching soap operas. We sneaked into Daniel's office. The computer, a MacBook Pro, was still on the desk, closed but with the sleep light blinking softly. He had just closed it, did not turn it off. That habit of laziness and excessive confidence that was going to cost him dearly. I plugged the USB into the side port. The screen lit up for a moment, but it did not ask for a password. A black window with commands opened, running green letters and codes at breakneck speed. My heart was going faster than the second hand of a broken watch. 30 seconds. Seemed like hours. 1 minute. Is it done? "Dad, what if he comes back for something? What if the maid comes in?" Sarah whispered, watching the window, sweating cold. "Ready." I pulled out the USB in one tug as soon as the word completed appeared on the screen. I closed the laptop and wiped my fingerprints. We took the USB to Sarah's old machine in the kitchen to read the data. The decoding program took a bit, but finally it showed us the text file, the chat between Daniel and a certain Master Li, all in Chinese characters. Sarah looked at it as if they were alien hieroglyphs. Let me see it. I narrowed my eyes, put on my thick reading glasses, and brought my face close to the screen. I took out my small pocket dictionary and started translating. Phrase by phrase. Deciphering the crime. Daniel, I already passed the 20K to your wife. Check, please, that there are no errors. Master Li, received. The money arrived well, remember, in tomorrow's contract. Inflate the operating expenses item 15% more. That is my part and yours for the future. To the corporate in Shanghai. Report to them that it is because of Mexico's unstable inflation and local taxes. Daniel, relax. Master. My wife already signed the power of attorney without reading it. I signed this contract. Empty the company accounts. Declare fraudulent bankruptcy and leave. You cover my back with the group so they do not investigate. Master Li. Happy cooperation, partner. And be careful. Do not let your father-in-law find out. That senile old man looks like he likes to snoop. As I read aloud, Sarah became paler, grabbed her stomach. Senile old man, I muttered, closing the dictionary with a dry thud. Very well, pair of imbeciles. This old man is going to teach you what being senile really means. It was enough. We had everything. Audio recording of the insults and the escape plan. Photo of the bank transfer of the bribe. Chat history confirming the conspiracy to defraud the parent group. This was not a simple file. It was an atomic bomb ready to detonate. We did not dare send the email from Sarah's house, nor use personal computers or phones. They could track our IP address. Daniel may be an arrogant fool, but he has money to pay systems experts who would track us in minutes. My daughter and I disguised ourselves a little, she with a cap and dark glasses, me with my old hat, and we took a bus to a poor neighborhood north of the city, far from our area. We arrived at a seedy cyber cafe, a dark place that smelled of cheap cigarettes, teenage sweat and stale snacks. The frantic typing of kids playing shooting video games could be heard. I chose a machine in the darkest corner, where the screen could not be seen from the entrance. Sarah sat next to me, watching the door like a bodyguard. I created a disposable and encrypted email account. Sender name, Silent Justice. Subject of the email, written in formal Chinese. I reviewed it 1,000 times in my head so it would be perfect and respectful. Urgent. Evidence of grave corruption and fraud in Mexico branch. For the eyes of President Zhang Wei only. I started typing, my old fingers, clumsy and calloused from holding screwdrivers so much, slipped a little on the greasy and sticky keyboard. Estimated and honorable President Zhang, I am an anonymous observer who respects your company. I write this missive to alert you about a vile conspiracy occurring under your own nose. I attached all the files, the audio, the photos, the chat history. Every time the blue loading bar advanced a percentage, I felt as if I were putting a high-caliber bullet into the chamber of a sniper rifle. The internet was slow, agonizingly slow. 80%, 90%. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. It was freezing like a corpse, but her grip was firm. Send it. Dad, do it. I looked at the screen for the last time. A simple click was going to change everyone's destiny. It was going to destroy Daniel's career forever. It was going to leave my daughter as a divorcee in the mouth of all the hypocritical society. We were going to face a legal and media hurricane. But it was going to give us the most valuable thing, freedom. Click. The message sent appeared on the screen. I released the air, leaning back on the hard plastic chair that hurt my back. I felt an immense relief, as if I took off a sack of stones, but also a lot of anxiety. We had already thrown the stone into the lake. Now it only remained to see how big the tsunami would be. And now what? Dad? Sarah asked quietly, almost inaudible. Now we wait, daughter, and we pray that Mr. Jiang Wei is the just and honorable dragon they say he is, and not another corrupt one. A whole day passed, 24 hours of a silence that suffocated more than the city smog. Nothing happened. The phone did not ring. There were no emails. Daniel remained happy. Living in his cloud, he whistled while shaving, tried on the new Italian silk suit in front of the mirror, turning to see his rear end. He was so cynical that he told Sarah at dinner, "Tomorrow when we finish the signing and they give me the bonus, I will buy tickets for you and me to go to Cancun to relax." I knew perfectly well, from the chats, that those tickets were already bought in his name and Jessica's. Sarah and I were in the kitchen, with our nerves destroyed, glued to my old cell phone where I configured the email to notify me. Nothing. Just digital silence. Doubts began to eat us alive. Did the email go to the spam folder? Does the president of a multinational corporation read anonymous emails? Or do his assistants delete them? What if he is also colluding and warns Lee? Fear began to get into our bones like humidity, if the plan failed. Daniel signed tomorrow at noon, got the money, emptied the accounts and fled before we could even file a complaint. Ping. A sharp, metallic sound broke the silence of the kitchen at 11 at night. My heart gave a violent lurch. Sarah jumped from the chair. I opened the email with clumsy fingers. Sender. Executive Office of the President. Ocean Group. Content. In Chinese. Brief. Concise and cold as sword steel. Received. Preliminary verification of authenticity performed. The information appears correct. Maintain absolute status quo. Do not alert the objective under any circumstance. We will send a plenipotentiary representative to handle directly during the signing ceremony. Your presence is required. I read the message twice to be sure. I translated it to Sarah. Voice trembling. The girl shuddered, covered her mouth, and tears came out all at once. They believed us. Dad, my God, they believed us. Do not sing victory, yet. I shook my head, although inside I jumped with joy like a child. They only believe that the evidence deserves to be investigated. Tomorrow is Judgment Day, and we have to be there to see the guillotine fall. The night before the signing. Daniel called us to the living room. He was sitting with his legs crossed, cognac glass in hand, feeling like the owner of the world. Tomorrow is the most important day of my life. The day I move to the big leagues, he said, all conceited, looking at us over his shoulder. You two are going with me to the hotel. Dad, please. Put on the most decent thing you have. I do not want you to look homeless. Do not wear that ragged sweater full of pills. Sarah, you quiet, just smile. Nod and pose for the photos. Understood? I stared at him. I saw a man standing on the edge of the cliff, dancing, believing he is on top of the highest mountain. Yes, son-in-law, I answered with a raspy voice, lowering my head to hide the shine in my eyes. I will put on my best suit. The special suit I used to say goodbye to what is already dead and buried. He frowned, annoyed by my gloomy tone. What old man nonsense are you saying? Go to sleep and do not bother. I went to my room, took out from the bottom of the closet my old black suit, wrapped in plastic, the one I wore at my wife's funeral. I smoothed every wrinkle with my hand. Tomorrow I would not go as the rancher father-in-law and nuisance. I would go as the silent witness of justice. That night I dreamed of Emily. She was young, beautiful, smiled and whispered to me, "Hit them hard, old man. Hit them with everything." The next morning, the sky of the city was gray and heavy, threatening rain, but in my chest a forest fire had already started to burn. We got into Daniel's car, heading to the 5-star hotel, where the stage was already set for the last act of his miserable comedy. That morning I woke up before the sun, with a knot in my stomach that was not hunger, but anticipation. My little rented room was flooded with a penetrating smell of mothballs. For many it is an unpleasant smell. For me it is the smell of memory, of preservation, The aroma that came out of the old black suit I had just taken out of its vacuum-sealed plastic bag. It was the suit I used at my wife Emily's funeral 2 years ago. It was frayed at the neck. The fabric shone at the elbows from wear. The second button was a little loose, and the wide cut had definitely gone out of style since the 90s. But it was clean. I had brushed it with so much care and ironed it with so much dedication that the lines of the pants cut like razor blades. I put it on and looked at myself in the broken bathroom mirror, a dark-skinned old man, gray-haired, with a face marked by deep furrows like canyons of dry earth. I did not look like a businessman, and much less a VIP guest. I looked like someone going to a burial, or the ghost of someone who already died, and so it was. Today I was going to a burial. I was going to bury my son-in-law's fraudulent career and, with luck, resurrect my daughter's life. Sarah's phone vibrated on the table. "Dad, the car's here. Let's go." I went out the door. Daniel's shiny black luxury car, a latest model, Mercedes, was waiting with the engine running. He was in the front seat, with dark aviator glasses. Although the morning was gray and cloudy, Sarah was in the back, makeup discreetly to hide the dark circles, but her hands intertwined on her lap could not hide the nervous tension. I opened the door and got in next to my daughter. The smell of new leather from the seats, mixed with Daniel's penetrating and expensive perfume, hit my nose like an olfactory punch. Blessed Jesus. Daniel wrinkled his nose, looking at me with disgust through the rearview mirror. "Dad, from what mummy museum did you get those clothes? You already stunk up my whole car with mothballs and old age. How embarrassing." I adjusted my lapel with a calm I did not feel. "This is the most decent suit I have." "Son, people use it to show respect before a solemn end." "What end?" "Today is the beginning of my empire," he laughed with disdain, shaking his head while adjusting the mirror. "Well, whatever. As long as you do not open your mouth and stay quiet. Just stand in the corner for the family photo. Smile toothless. And that is it." He turned to Sarah, with an aggressive and authoritarian voice. "And you, Sarah, do you remember well the script I gave you? When the signing ends, the finance reporters are going to ask you how you feel. You just have to say, 'I am proud of my husband. He is a solid pillar and a visionary.' Understood? No stuttering or making a victim face." Sarah squeezed my hand hard under her bag. It was freezing, like an ice cube. I returned the squeeze, passing a little warmth from my calloused and raspy hand. "Yes," Sarah replied, with a light voice but firm as steel. "I will tell the pure truth about you. Daniel, do not worry. The world will know exactly who you are." Daniel nodded, satisfied, so full of himself that he did not catch the deadly irony in those words. He turned up the volume of the music and started whistling, moving his head, like a condemned man dancing on the way to the gallows, believing he is climbing to the throne. The car moved smoothly, leaving behind the poor and potholed streets of the old neighborhood, heading to the glass and steel skyscrapers of the financial district. I looked through the tinted window at the hurried workers running on the sidewalk, selling their sweat and time for a few dollars, carrying their lunchbox, while my son-in-law, sitting here in his air-conditioned bubble, planned to steal millions of dollars with a single signature of his golden pen. Damn it. This world is crooked and needs a little justice, and if God is too busy up there to distribute it, let this old Michael do it in his place with his own hands. The Intercontinental Hotel was luxurious as a European palace. The event hall was decorated with imported fresh flowers, white orchids that cost a fortune, and huge red silk banners with golden letters in Spanish and Chinese. Strategic Cooperation Signing Ceremony, Ocean Group and Daniel Ventures. I entered feeling small, an ant in the land of giants, out of place among so many people dressed in brands and smelling of success. The curious and pitying looks of the waiters and guests slipped off me like water. Who is that old rancher with a dead man's suit? I could read their thoughts in their raised eyebrows. Daniel, ashamed, quickly pushed me towards a table hidden behind some large palm pots. Dad, stay here quiet. Do not go walking around, or you are going to break something or scare the investors. Here they bring you soda. I sat down, but my ears and eyes were working at full speed, recording every detail. At the main table, elevated on a platform, Mr. Li was sitting, imposing like a Buddha of abundance, but with glassy snake eyes. By his side was the secretary, Jessica, my son-in-law's mistress. The chick wore a red dress with a daring neckline, inappropriate for a business event, and walked from one side to another, serving tea to Mr. Li, and from time to time threw flirtatious and complicit little looks at Daniel. Daniel approached the main table. Strutting, he leaned in and whispered something to Mr. Li. I narrowed my eyes, concentrating, blocking the ambient noise. The background music, classical violins, was a little loud, but I managed to catch the familiar sounds that cut the air. Chinese. Chinese again. He believed that was his encrypted communication channel, his secret code. Everything good. Mr. Li, I already made my wife sign the bribe transfer order this morning, as soon as they release the funds from the corporate. The 10% flies straight to your pocket in Hong Kong, said Daniel, with a voice trembling with emotion and greed. Mr. Li laughed, showing his tobacco-stained teeth, and gave him a paternal pat on the shoulder. You work fast and well. Boy, that Zhang Wei at headquarters in Shanghai is too busy with the merger in Europe. He is not going to pay attention to this small branch in Mexico. We eat the cake, wipe our mouths well with the napkin, and that is it. Nobody will know anything. And my wife? Daniel pointed with his chin to Sarah, who was receiving guests at the entrance, with a smile that looked like a porcelain mask. Mr. Li made a grimace of disinterest, like someone talking about throwing away trash. Once the contract is signed, she no longer has value. It is an empty shell. Do what you want, but be discreet. Do not let the press make a scandal before I retire quietly to my villa. Do not worry. I already have a fake psychiatric file ready for her with a doctor friend of mine. I will say stress drove her crazy. I will commit her for a while, and that will be the perfect excuse for divorce and keeping custody of the assets. Daniel laughed between his teeth, a dry and cruel laugh. The blood rushed to my head boiling, clouding my vision. Son of a bitch! Not only did he want to steal the money, he wanted to destroy my daughter's mind and dignity, turn her into a crazy woman in the eyes of the world, to justify his theft. My hands gripped the fabric of my old pants until my knuckles hurt. I looked at Sarah. She was not far. She did not understand Chinese, but she saw the wolfish smiles of those two men. She turned to see me, looking for a signal, an anchor. I gave her a very slight nod, almost imperceptible with my head. Calm down, daughter. Calm down, my girl. The trap is already set and oiled. The prey already entered the cage thinking it is his palace. Now it only remains for the old hunter to pull the rope. At that moment, the lights of the hall went out suddenly, leaving only a powerful spotlight pointing at the stage. The voice of the master of ceremonies resonated like a cannon. Ladies and gentlemen, take your seats. We begin the historic signing ceremony. Daniel went up to the stage under the spotlight, as if he were a Hollywood star receiving an Oscar. The applause rumbled, hypocritical and polite. He adjusted the knot of his silk tie and let out the most radiant and fake smile he could. That same charming smile with which he deceived my daughter and me for 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, he started his speech reading from the teleprompter. Today we not only sign a paper. Today marks the ascent of the Mexican company towards the Asian dragon. This cooperation with the Ocean Group is proof that talent has no borders. Blah, blah. Blah. I did not hear another word. I just stared at the giant high-definition LED screen behind his back. There the slides with growth charts would be projected. But I knew, or prayed with every fiber of my being, that it would project something else. Mr. Li also went up, walking heavily, and sat at the signing table opposite Daniel. 2 contracts bound in red leather were there, waiting, like 2 death sentences. Jessica was next to them, standing, passing a gold-plated Mont Blanc pen to Daniel with an exaggerated bow. "We invite both parties to proceed with the official signing," shouted the MC, animating the atmosphere. Daniel grabbed the pen. His hand did not tremble even a little. The cynical jerk was enjoying the moment. He put the golden tip on the paper. With just that signature, the stroke of black ink, the money from Sarah's mother's house mortgage would evaporate forever, and the huge capital of the Ocean Group would flow into the secret pockets of these 2 thieves. I held my breath until my chest hurt. Sarah, sitting in the first row reserved for the family, also stopped breathing. She squeezed her purse so hard her knuckles turned white as bone. 3 seconds. Time stretched like gum. 2 seconds. Suddenly, a strident, sharp, and repetitive sound broke the solemn air. It wasn't applause. It wasn't triumphant music. It was a phone ring. But not just anyone. It was the emergency call ring, a digital siren, coming out of the video conference system connected to the giant speakers of the hall. Ring, ring, ring. People looked confused everywhere, looking for the culprit for not putting their cell phone on silent. Daniel froze, with the pen floating millimeters from the paper. He made a grimace of anger and turned to the audio technician who was at the console. "Turn off that damn noise. Who dares to call now? Incompetent people." Mr. Li, on the other hand, changed color. From his reddish tone, he went to an ash gray. He seemed to recognize that specific tone. It was the internal code red ring of the Ocean Group, used only when the board of directors in China convened an absolute emergency meeting on the giant LED screen behind. The slide of the company logo flickered, distorted, and disappeared. A video call window appeared, expanding until it occupied the entire visual wall. The screen went black for a second, full of static. Then the image cleared in high definition, a luxurious office, sober, with the red flag of China and the party behind. And sitting there, a middle-aged man with a cold face, expressionless like a block of granite, and eyes sharp as butcher knives. Mr. Li dropped the pen from his hand. It rolled on the wooden floor, making a dry noise. Clack, clack, clack. That was heard amplified by the sudden silence. "President Zhang?" stuttered Mr. Li, almost choking on his own saliva. His lapel microphone was still on, so his trembling and panic-filled voice was heard throughout the hall. The whole hall fell into a sepulchral silence. Absolute. It was so terrifying that one could hear the electric hum of the lamps and the beat of my own heart. Nobody moved. The man on the screen, the fearsome President Zhang Wei, did not smile. He did not say hello. He did not make any courtesy. He was sitting with his back straight as a rod, hands intertwined on the mahogany table. In front of him was a single thing, a folder, a blood-red folder. Li Ming. Mr. Zhang's voice sounded amplified by the speakers, deep, powerful, and with a metallic echo. He spoke in Mandarin Chinese with an accent of authority that admitted no reply. "What exactly do you intend to sign with that dirty hand?" Mr. Li jumped up, knocking the chair back. He was sweating buckets. His face shone under the spotlights. He bowed deeply before the giant screen. "Mr. President, honorable members, This is the Mexico project I reported last month. It is an opportunity with much potential. Potential for your personal pocket or for the group," Zhang interrupted him, with a calm that was scarier than screams. He lifted the red folder and showed it open to the high-definition camera. "This morning, Beijing time, I received a very interesting anonymous email, and it came with even more interesting attached evidence." Zhang turned the pages slowly, deliberately, so everyone could see. Screenshots of the $20,000 bribe transferred to your wife's private account. High-fidelity audio recording of your conversation about the illegal percentage split. and the complete WeChat chat history that you believed, in your arrogance, to have deleted from the cloud. Daniel was standing like a salt statue. He did not understand Chinese. He looked left and right like a cornered animal. He saw Mr. Lee shaking like a leaf, then the giant screen, with a face of total idiocy. What the hell is happening? What is that Chinese guy saying? Mr. Lee? Explain. Translate. Daniel shouted in English, desperate, losing his composure. But Mr. Lee had no head to explain anything. He knew he was dead professionally and socially. President. Let me explain. Please. It is a terrible misunderstanding. That Daniel deceived me. He set a trap for me. Mr. Lee started denying everything, whining, pointing an accusing finger at Daniel. On the screen, Zhang hit the table that rumbled like a shot in the hall. Shut your mouth. You disgrace the company. Li Ming, you are fired with immediate effect. The legal department and the Shanghai police are on their way to your house to seize your assets and arrest your wife. And in Mexico, I already notified the economic crimes police. Stay sitting there and wait for the handcuffs. You have nowhere to run. Then Zhang looked straight at the camera, with an icy look that seemed to pierce the screen, cross the ocean and stick directly into Daniel's black soul, who remained stunned on stage. And tell your Mexican partner, Zhang continued, still in Chinese, spitting the word partner with infinite contempt, that the Ocean Group never, ever cooperates with immoral scammers who cheat and steal from their own wives. This contract is void. It is toilet paper. The screen went out suddenly, leaving a giant black square. Mr. Lee collapsed in the chair, pale as a corpse, breathing with difficulty. The crowd began to make noise, a murmur that grew to be total chaos. The reporters crowded it at the foot of the stage, flashes firing like machine guns. Daniel, without understanding what had just happened, but knowing that everything was collapsing, grabbed Mr. Lee by the lapels of his suit and shook him violently. Hey, wake up. What did that old man say? Why did they turn off the screen? Sign now. Damn it. Sign. Where is my money? He kept thinking about the money. His reptilian brain did not process anything else. He kept thinking it was a technical failure or a minor scolding. He did not know that the rope was already tightening around his neck and that the floor had opened under his feet. I got up from my hidden chair. My knees cracked, but I felt taller than ever. It was time. It was time for the old man, old furniture, to speak and the clock to mark the final hour. I adjusted the lapel of my old suit, passed my hand over the frayed fabric, and breathed deep, filling my old lungs with air. The smell of mothballs seemed to have gone, replaced by the electric smell of the storm that had just broken. I came out of my dark corner, pushed aside a palm leaf that covered me, and walked straight to the stage. My steps were slow, but firm, resonating on the wood. Sarah saw me from the first row. She nodded. With eyes breathing fire and contained tears, she stepped aside to make way for me, like an honor guard. What are you doing? Dad, go to your place. Useless old man, Daniel, seeing me go up the stage stairs, screamed at me, with eyes bulging, looking for someone to vent his panic on. Security. Get this old man out. Do not make more of a mess. I did not stop. Nobody from security moved. They were too confused watching the show. I arrived at his side. He was taller than me, younger, stronger, but in that moment he was minuscule. I snatched the wireless microphone from Mr. Lee's hand, who was lying there like a dirty rag. Let me translate for you. Son-in-law, I said into the microphone. My voice sounded raspy, tired, but clear in every syllable in English. The echo filled the hall. Everyone fell silent, fixing their eyes on the old man in an outdated funeral suit, standing under the spotlight. What? What are you going to know how to translate? Daniel let out a mocking laugh, hysterical, but it came out crooked, a grimace of pure fear. Are you crazy? I turned to look him straight in the eyes, those eyes that so many times looked at me with contempt. Then I looked at the people below, at the society that worships money, and then I spoke. Not in English. President Zhang says that the Ocean Group does not work with trash that cheats on his wife and steals from his own family. I said it in Chinese. The whole room let out a collective "oh" of surprise. The few who knew Chinese, assistants, translators from the embassy, were left with their mouths open, recognizing my accent. Daniel looked like he had been struck by lightning. He took a step back, tripping over his own feet, with eyes bulging like glass marbles. "Dad." "What? What are you saying?" he stuttered, pale, as if he had seen a dog speak. I continued, still in that Mandarin Chinese that I practiced thousands of hours in the darkness of my kitchen, repeating until my throat hurt. Every tone, every accent was precise, hard, hitting like a hammer on an anvil. "Daniel, do you think I'm old furniture that gets in the way in the corner? Do you think I'm a senile old man who's only good for pity? You were wrong. Boy, the last 2 years I learned your secret language, just to understand the blackness and rot of your heart. I switched to English so everyone would understand," my voice roared, letting out all the stored anger, years of humiliations coming out like lava. "You called my daughter a stupid cow in Chinese, in my own face, at my own table. You planned to run away with the money to Cayman and leave her in ruins, in my own face. Did you think language was your impenetrable shield? No. Daniel, language is a double-edged sword, and today, that edge just cut your throat." Daniel was trembling, sweating buckets, his expensive suit already soaked. He looked at me with terror, then at Lee, who was crying, then looked for Jessica in the audience, the mistress who was already sneaking away like a rat towards the emergency exit. "No, it cannot be. You are just a neighborhood watchmaker, a nobody." "Yes," I replied, recovering calm, a cold and absolute calm. "I am a watchmaker, and that is why I know better than anyone when a mechanism runs out of wind. I know when a phony's time is up. Tick-tock, Daniel. Tick-tock. Your time is up." I threw the microphone on the table with contempt. A boom, dry, resonated in the speakers, making everyone jump. At the same time, the large double doors at the back of the hall burst open with a crash. They were not waiters with more champagne. It was the police. 2 economic crimes officers and a lawyer with a face of few friends entered, walking fast towards the stage, accompanying Sarah, who had gone down to receive them. Daniel saw the blue uniforms and his legs buckled. He fell sitting in the chair, collapsed, right next to the unsigned contract. The trap closed, and the rat's spine broke. The hall was absolute chaos, like a market in panic when the inspection arrives. The camera flashes exploded like an electric storm, blinding, pointing directly at Daniel's bloodless face. He was standing there, flailing, sweating so much that the makeup he put on for the photos ran, revealing the true face of a pathetic coward. "Sarah, Sarah, my love," he shouted when he saw me drop the microphone and get off the stage. He launched himself towards the edge, looking for my daughter with the desperation of a castaway. "Say something. Your dad is crazy. He has senile dementia. This old man is inventing things out of jealousy. You are my wife. You swore at the altar. You have to defend me." He tried to go down to grab Sarah's hand, but she took a step back, a single short step back. But it represented the infinite distance between the hell she lived and the solid ground she now stepped on. Sarah stayed there, erect, with her head high, illuminated by the flashes. She was no longer the submissive woman who lowered her gaze, cleaning the kitchen while he scolded her. Today she wore a simple but elegant black dress, with eyeliner outlining eyes staring without blinking at the man she once called husband, and for whom she gave everything. "Defend you?" asked Sarah, with a voice so calm it froze blood. She took the microphone I had left and that a technician brought to her. Her voice sounded clear, melodious and firm, shutting out all the noise in the hall. "Daniel, You want me to defend you from what? From the truth? From your own acts? Sarah lifted the cheap blue plastic folder she had pressed against her chest since the beginning of the ceremony. Gentlemen of the press, guests, she said, turning to the crowd, with a dignity that made me cry. My husband just said that my father invents things. Let me show you proofs that cannot be invented. Mathematical proofs. She took out a color-printed sheet. Enlarged. This is the statement of your secret bank account in the Cayman Islands. Daniel. Account number 458B. The account where you put the money from my mother's house mortgage, leaving her at risk of foreclosure. And this. She took out the second sheet, showing it to the cameras. Monday, the automatic monthly transfer order of $5,000 for the maintenance of the penthouse in the city, which is deeded in the name of Miss Jessica Gomez. The crowd exclaimed a scandalized, "Oh!" The gossip ran like gunpowder. All eyes went to the exit door where Jessica was trying to escape. The mistress turned white. She tried to shrink to hide among the people, but the flashes caught her like a thief. Sarah looked back at Daniel. In her eyes there was no longer love, not even hate or resentment. They were empty. That indifferent void you dedicate to a piece of trash you find on the street, and that is not even worth kicking. You called me stupid cow and cold oatmeal. Is it not true? Sarah smiled slightly, a sad smile. This stupid cow finished her corporate law degree 5 years ago with honors, but she hid the title in a drawer because you said smart women intimidated you and did not need to study so much. And today, this stupid cow uses that title to officially fire you. She threw the folder at his chest with all her strength. The papers flew through the air, falling on him like snow in summer, covering him in his own filth. I, Sarah, as co-owner of 50% of the company shares, according to the joint property law that you forgot to read, declare your dismissal as general director immediately for embezzlement of funds, fraud, and grave breach of marital and business ethics. Daniel stood petrified, covered in papers with his mouth open. He wanted to speak, but only a moan came out, and... Sarah raised her left hand. She took off her wedding ring from her ring finger, the diamond ring he bought with her savings money. She looked at it for a second, like someone looking at a broken chain. She let it fall to the wooden floor of the stage. Clink. The sound of metal against the floor sounded dry, final, irrevocable. I also fire you from the position of my husband. The express divorce lawsuit and the criminal complaint were filed by my lawyer at court this morning. First thing, good luck with what remains of your life. Daniel. I was by the side looking at my daughter. My God, she was no longer my little girl I had to protect. She was an Aztec warrior, a queen who had just put on her own crown after cutting off the head of the monster that oppressed her. The large doors of the hall opened wide for the second time. But now it was not theatrical. It was definitive. The atmosphere changed from party to crime scene. 2 federal police officers in tactical blue uniforms entered, walking with heavy steps, followed by Sarah's criminal lawyer. They walked straight to the stage, crossing the dance floor, the people, the high society. That seconds before, applauded Daniel, automatically moved aside as if the Red Sea were parting. Nobody wanted to be associated with the plague. Citizen Daniel Gonzalez, asked the senior officer, with a voice hard as steel and without any courtesy. Daniel nodded, trembling, or maybe he trembled so much that his head moved alone like a bobblehead doll. You are detained for alleged international financial fraud, money laundering and falsification of mortgage documents. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you. The sound of metal handcuffs closing on his wrists went click-clack, that cold. Mechanical sound was the final period of his life of farce, expensive suits and lies. No, you are wrong. I am a respectable businessman. They set a trap for me, he shouted, resisting weakly. Suddenly he saw Jessica near the door, detained by a female officer. Jessica. My love, say something. You keep the accounting books. Tell them it was Lee's idea. But Jessica, ha! They say well that a trader's woman also carries trader and survival blood. As soon as she saw the ship sinking, she was already looking for the lifeboat. Jessica Gomez, said the officer, come with us to the station to clarify the origin of the $50,000 in your account and your participation in the scheme. Jessica screamed shrilly, losing all glamour, kicking like a tantrum-throwing child, scratching the air with her fake red nails. I do not know anything. He forced me. Daniel threatened me. He told me that if I did not receive the money, he was going to beat me. I am a victim. Damn lying bitch, howled Daniel upon hearing that his true love was selling him for her freedom. You promised to go to Shanghai with me. You said you loved me more than your life. Who is going to want to go with a failed convict like you? Jessica spat at him from afar. You disgust me. The scene was pathetic, almost comic if it were not so tragic. Two people who swore eternal love in secret, who called themselves soulmates, in bed making fun of Sarah, now tearing each other apart like stray dogs, fighting over a rotten bone in the mud. Mr. Lee was already detained by the hotel's private security in a separate room, waiting for the extradition order, or whatever the Chinese embassy said. He was sitting with his head down between his hands, his belly vibrating from crying, without a trace of the arrogance of the powerful Master Lee. I was leaning on a marble column, arms crossed, watching the whole show. I did not feel the sweet taste of victory I imagined. I only felt a deep bitterness in my mouth. People, when they have money and power, believe themselves untouchable gods. But when you take away the golden shell, they are worse than cockroaches when you turn on the kitchen light. They run, step on each other, and eat each other. Daniel was dragged past where I was standing. He looked at me. His eyes were red, bloodshot, and full of tears and snot. There was no more arrogance, only childish fear. Dad, Dad, help me. Please, I am your son. Forgive me. Tell Sarah to forgive me. Tell them it was a mistake. I looked at him. I looked at the son-in-law I once loved like my own son, the boy I gave my last retirement savings to years ago, so he could buy his first decent suit for a job interview. I bent down slowly, bringing my face close to his, and told him the last phrase, softly, with infinite sadness. Daniel, I have fixed thousands of broken watches in my life. Some had bad gears, others the broken mainspring, others just needed cleaning, all of them, even the oldest ones I could fix with patience. But you, your machinery, your soul, is broken from the center, from the factory. That there is no watchmaker in the world who can fix. Repent in there. Son, it is the only thing you have left. The police took him away shoving. His screams of pleading faded down the hall until they went silent behind the elevator doors. The hall remained desolate. Broken glasses on the floor, trampled contracts. Only Sarah and I remained standing, survivors in the middle of the shipwreck. When the commotion calmed down and the police took the detainees away, the large LED screen on the stage flickered and turned back on clearly. The video call from Shanghai had not been cut. President Zhang Wei was still there, in his office on the other side of the world, observing everything from beginning to end with an expressionless face, like an emperor watching a necessary execution. Now, his gaze was fixed on Sarah. Miss Sarah, his voice sounded through the speakers, this time with a professional interpreter translating to English to give the moment maximum formality. I am very impressed. Rarely have I seen such a display of intelligence and bravery. You and your father have helped the Ocean Group to excise some cancerous tumors that would have cost us millions. Sarah approached the camera. She wiped a rebellious tear and nodded politely, recovering composure. Thank you, Mr. President, for listening and acting in time to compensate for these problems and the damage to your family, continued Zhang, changing his tone to that of a business shark. I want to make you a formal proposal. I want you to take Daniel's place as legal representative and partner of the joint venture in Mexico. The investment contract of $5 million still stands. The money is ready. We need a smart, honest local partner with guts, with that capital. You can lift the company, expand and get rich, very rich. A heavy silence fell over the few remaining in the hall. A tempting offer, $5 million. The opportunity to change life radically, to go from being a cheated and indebted woman to a powerful CEO in an instant, the reporters murmured, envying her lottery luck. I looked at my daughter, holding the air in my lungs. Would she fall into temptation after all? Poverty is very scary, and power is a strong aphrodisiac. With that money, she would never have to worry about anything again. Sarah remained silent for a long moment. She looked at me. I made no sign to her. I did not nod or deny. I stayed still, letting her decide. It was her life, her test of fire. Then Sarah turned back to the camera, raised her chin, and smiled softly. But with a dignified sadness, Mr. Zhang, your offer is incredibly generous. It is anyone's dream. But allow me to reject it. The whole room exclaimed an ah of disbelief. The interpreter stuttered. Zhang raised an eyebrow, really surprised for the first time. You reject $5 million. Why? Do you despise money? No one in their right mind despises money, sir. Unless me, who has debts, Sarah replied firmly. But I saw how your high-level staff works, Mr. Li. I saw how the culture of bribes, the culture of despising women and the old, took deep roots in your branch, under your supervision. If a tree has fat worms in the trunk, the fruit, no matter how shiny it looks, is not safe to eat. She breathed deep, her voice resonating with strength. I do not want to build my career on the rotten foundations Daniel left, nor on Ocean's guilty charity. I am going to liquidate this company. I am going to sell down to the last piece of furniture to pay the small investors, the families my husband scammed before you. I am going to start from scratch, from the bottom, but it will be a clean zero. It will be my zero. Zhang looked at her in silence for a long time through the screen. His cold look changed, softening, passing from calculation to deep respect, a warrior to warrior respect. He nodded slowly, a virtual bow. Very well, there is a saying in my country, Hu fu wu quan nu. Tiger father does not beget dog daughter. I see it is true. You have an honor that is rare to find nowadays. I respect your decision. Good luck, Miss Sarah. The screen turned off permanently. I released the air relieved, feeling my legs trembling, but with a chest full of pride I cannot explain with words. My daughter is not only smart, she has dignity. That rare and precious thing that not even with all the millions in China can be bought in the market. 1 year later, the sun in the city today is not gray. It is golden, shiny, as if they spilled honey on the sidewalks. I am sitting on a white-painted wooden chair, a little faded, on the porch of a small shop in the old neighborhood, a quiet, bohemian neighborhood, with jacaranda trees that give fresh shade. The smell of freshly baked bread comes from inside, flooding the street. It is a smell of vanilla, cinnamon, yeast, hot butter. It is the smell of simple happiness and honest work. The rustic wooden sign hanging above me, which I sanded and varnished myself, has a simple phrase engraved, Sarah and Michael's Bakery. We no longer live in the cold mansion in the hills. That cursed house was sold to pay the bank, the lawyers, and, above all, to return their money to the small partners Daniel scammed. We were left with nothing. After paying the last penny, Sarah had a tiny bit of money left, barely enough for the deposit on this place and to buy 2 used industrial ovens. But boy, never, not even in her best days as a society lady, had I seen my girl as beautiful and radiant as now. She is in there, behind the glass counter, with her apron full of flour stains, hair tied in a messy bun, laughing out loud with a customer. She no longer needs to apply 3 layers of makeup to cover the crying circles. She no longer has to bow her head, saying, "Yes, my love," to everything. She is the owner, the boss of her own life and destiny. Daniel was given 12 years in prison without the right to bail. Sometimes I read in the crime section of the newspaper about the fights and filth in the northern prison, and, honestly, I feel nothing. Neither joy nor pity. He is already past, ancient history. Like a broken watch without repair that you throw in the trash and forget. "Dad!" shouted Sarah from inside, taking me out of my thoughts. "Stop falling asleep. There is a customer who wants to ask you about the antique wall clock, the German cuckoo." I got up, shaking the crumbs off my pants. Apart from helping to watch the store and test the bread, my favorite job, I opened a small corner in the back to repair watches. The customers love the idea. They eat a hot, sweet roll, listen to the relaxing tick-tock of time, and hear old Michael tell stories of when the city was different. I entered the shop. A young couple of Chinese tourists was looking fascinated at the old pendulum clock I just restored. "Ni hao." "Hello." I greeted them with a smile. My Mandarin remained as precise and rusty as ever. They were surprised and smiled. "How well you speak Chinese, Grandpa." I winked at them mischievously. "Ah, I learned from a very special and very expensive teacher. The tuition cost me a fortune, but the lesson was worth it." Sarah looked at me from the register and laughed, shaking her head. We understood each other with a glance. That tuition was Daniel's betrayal. It came out very expensive. It cost 5 years of my daughter's youth and my wife's house, but in exchange it taught us what we are worth and what we are made of. Life now is modest. There are no luxury cars. We travel by subway. There are no elegant parties with champagne. Our dinner is usually hot noodle soup and the bread left over from the day, but in that dinner, at that small table, there are no lies, there are no secrets. We can sleep peacefully deeply, without fear of being stabbed in the back or the phone ringing with threats. That, my friends, is true wealth. Very late, when the last customers left and we lowered the metal curtain, I stayed alone at my work table. Under the light of my magnifying lamp, I had in my hand an old pocket watch, one of those with a chain, that I was fixing for a neighbor. The gears were stuck by dust and grease from years of neglect. I used the fine tweezers, holding my breath, and with surgical care I was removing every grain of dust, every fluff, meticulous, patient. Suddenly, while watching the flywheel turn, I thought of Daniel. He was like a watch that goes too fast, an accelerated mechanism. He wanted to skip time. He wanted to eat the hours. He wanted to get rich easy, skip the rules of physics and life. And the inevitable result was that his mainspring broke from the tension and exploded into pieces. Sarah and I, we are different. We are like the slow hands, those of the hours. We go step by step, tick, tock, tick, tock, slow, sometimes painfully slow, but sure, and most importantly, we are on time. We arrive when we have to arrive. I open the drawer of my table, where I still keep, like an amulet, the old Chinese notebook from that terrible year. The pages are already yellow. I read my crooked letters from then, written with rage. Pianzi, scammer, jiating, family. I took out a red correction pencil. I crossed out with force the word Pianzi. It no longer exists in our vocabulary. And then, gently, I circled deeply the word jiating, family. That is the last fortress, the last refuge when the world falls apart. Many think that old people like me are a useless burden, that we are old furniture to store away. They forget that fine wood, the older it gets, the harder it gets, and the more it withstands the plague and the moth. They forget that a father, however poor, old or ignorant he may be, when it comes to defending his offspring, can draw strength from where he has none, and become a protective god, or an avenging demon. Sarah came out of the kitchen wiping her hands, and put her hand on my shoulder with affection. Let's go, Dad. It is late. Today I make you the dad's special stew you like to celebrate. Come on, daughter. How delicious. But put a little less chili and less meat. My stomach is already old and charges a bill. I close the shop with a double padlock. The sunset of the city dyed the street red and violet. I breathed the fresh air. I looked at the sign of our bakery for the last time and hugged my daughter by the shoulders, walking slowly towards the bus stop. They say around there that revenge is a dish best served cold. But I, Michael, the watchmaker, think differently. Revenge leaves you a bitter taste and does not fill your belly. Peace, dignity, and freedom. Those are indeed the most tasty and nutritious dish. And today, thank God, my daughter and I are going to sleep with a full belly and a happy heart. If this story has captivated you, like the video, subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box to the left of the screen. Thanks for watching.